What's up guys, my name is Brandon, also known as Claire. I'm a former professional Oceanic mid laner and multiple season rank 1 challenger player. To give a little more insight on myself, I played at the top of the Oceanic scene for about 8 plus years, and I actually started playing League in 2009 and spent many years on the NA servers. Currently, I'm trying to break into content creation, and I decided what better video to start with than a guide on a champion that I've been using to great success in solo queue this season, Sylas. So I guess I'll just start off by talking about the rune setup on Sylas. For the most part, it's pretty simple. You kind of run the same thing every game. Precision primary tree, non-negotiable. Conqueror is Sylas's best keystone. Presence of mind, best in slot. 99% of the time you take Legend Tenacity if they have literally 0 CC, and I mean no slows, no hard CC, nothing, then it's essentially not a rune anymore, so I guess you could go Alacrity, but you get so much attack speed from your passive that I don't even think Alacrity does anything anyway, so I always go Legend Tenacity. In the final row here, Last Stand outperforms this rune quite heavily. In my experience over the past few years using these runes, Last Stand outperforms, and it synergizes with your W, so if you're low HP, you get more healing and you get more damage. For your secondaries, in Sorcery, you can go Mana Flow Transcendence. This setup is Sylas's greediest setup and probably his best scaling setup, just because Transcendence is quite a powerful rune on him. The ability Refund is very OP for his kits, but I personally do not take this setup because don't think... I think you get punished a lot if you take greedy runes on Sylas because you're quite weak in lane. So I find that it's hard to lane into a lot of matchups when I pick these kind of runes. For Resolve, there's actually quite a lot of good runes in this tree. This is the best tree if you need Tenacity. So if you're versing a Tenacity CC heavy comp, or if you're versing like a CC heavy mid laner, Unflinching in combination with Legend Tenacity, it is an extremely overpowered combination. For the second row, I guess there's quite a few things to talk about. Conditioning is good when you're versing a laner that doesn't really trade with you or fight with you and allows you to free scale. A champion that comes to mind is like Kale. Even then, Kale, like if you like go into melee range and trade with her, she will trade back. So conditioning, kind of like if you know that you're gonna get through the lane with no issues whatsoever and you need unflinching. Second win if you're versing poke heavy, kind of self-explanatory. Um don't run bone plating if you're versing a ranged champion because it'll just get popped by one auto attack and you won't have it. Bone plating is good versus champions like Renekton, Kiana, like these trade heavy champions like go in like one burst combo, mitigating their first trade of the lane. So you have to use bone plating well. For starters, it is harder to use. If you mitigate their first trade of the lane, like 2 abilities, 3 abilities, it can swing the lane in your favor quite heavily. In this row, I pretty much always go unflinching if I'm going Resolve, but Overgrowth is also quite a good rune. Inspiration. So this is the tree I take most often, and it is probably the most consistent setup. I used to go boots, magical footwear, but I'll go in. I'll talk about it later in the items, but I don't think you should ever take this rune. I always go biscuits, and so in the final row, I either go Cosmic Insight or Time Warp Tonic. Most of the time, I go Cosmic Insight, but Time Warp Tonic is good if you're versing a skill shot based mid laner that's going to throw a lot of abilities at you that you can utilize the movement speed to dodge. So let's say, for example, you're versing a Syndra and she throws her QE at you, and like you've already got your corrupting potion ticking down and you get the extra movement speed, and you like get the few pixels off that allows you to dodge the QE. That is like a 120 mana swing in the early game that Syndra loses and gets no damage on you, and it actually changes the flow of the lane drastically. So the movement speed is really valuable for like dodging skill shots, and if you need to like auto space like a melee champion. So like for example, if Aurelia is like queuing on you, you can like kind of use the movement speed to get out of her range. So that's when I would run Time Warp. But for the most part, you can't really go wrong with Biscuit Delivery and Cosmic Insight. I think this is the most consistent setup. If you don't really know what to run for your matchup, you honestly can't go wrong with this setup. For the shards, CDR is better than Adaptive. It is Sylas's best stat, so I always go CDR. I go Adaptive in the second row, and Final row, it depends on your matchup. If you're versing a lot of magic damage, you get magic resist. If you're versing a lot of physical damage, you go armor. So if you're laning against like Lucian or something. The final thing I want to talk about is this health shard. So this health shard actually, what it does is it gives you more effective HP at a certain point. So I think it's like level 5 or something on Sylas. After a certain point, this rune will give you more effective HP. And what I mean by that is that if someone full combos you, you will have more HP versus that full combo with this HP rune than a resist. But because Sylas is like early lane is so weak, and in my opinion, a lot of the game and a lot of the early laning is decided before you hit level 5. So like from level 1, 2, 3, your early trades. I think it swings the game and the matchup quite a lot. So I don't really go HP shard unless I know I'm getting an absolutely free lane or the enemy laner is dealing a lot of mixed damage. I'll just quickly go over summoners here. Flash every game, non-negotiable. The only real option here is between teleport and ignite. For the most part, teleport is the more consistent summoner and the one you'll be taking most of the time. But ignite is good in certain matchups. So if you're versing like an Akali, sometimes like even a matchup like Kiana, which is kind of a hard matchup. If you play well, you can find solo kill potentials on a Kiana, so ignite can help you like snowball that lane in your favor. And a big thing is that the summoner you choose kind of dictates what items you start. So I'll kind of go into that in the next portion of the video. So going into the items, these are the 3 starts that you can go. There's Dark Seal, 3 pots / refillable, Doran's Ring, 2 pots, and Corrupting Potion. I went over the summoners earlier. If you're going Ignite, most of the time you're not going Corrupting Potion, you're going for the combat stats from Dark Seal or Doran's Ring. I recommend Doran's Ring. With Ignite, I personally don't go Dark Seal ever. I feel like this item is a bit too greedy and too risky in the early lane phase, like on first base, before first base I mean. So if I have Ignite, most of the time I'm going Doran's Ring and I'm just looking to trade hard in a matchup that I think I can win. But most of the time I'm playing TP and Corrupting Potion. So I think Corrupting Potion is the most consistent start. It gives you the most sustain, it gives you mana to farm with, it gives you like a little bit of damage for trading. And my goal in the early lane phase most games is I just want to crash 3-4 waves and recall and then buy a Dark Seal. And Corrupting Potion allows you to like trade your HP to push the wave, which is essentially what you need to do in a lot of matchups with Sylas. So I would say if you're not really an expert and you don't really know when to go which item, Corrupting Potion is the most consistent start. That said, your early game core is you always want to buy a Dark Seal. So every game you want to buy a Dark Seal on your first base or like on your second base. So you want to buy it early because this item is extremely gold efficient. Even when you have 0 stacks, it is already like worth the gold that you spend on it. But as soon as you start getting assists, as soon as you start getting kills and snowballing, this item's gold efficiency bloody skyrockets. So this item is an amazing item, especially on Sylas, who is quite a snowbally champion. So Lucidity Boots. Lucidity Boots is the best in slot boot for Sylas. I rush it almost every game. And the reason for that is because this item is really gold efficient, and when you're playing Sylas in the early game, you kind of want to rely on like gold efficiency to get through the early game, because early lane is pretty rough on Sylas. To be honest, a lot of matchups are a bit harder to win, and it's like farm in. CDR Boots allows you to clear waves like pretty efficiently. You have more cooldowns using the wave, more cooldowns to trade with. The movement speed allows you to roam up and down the map more and get fed and snowball. And the biggest thing is that ability haste is Sylas's best stat. So the reason for this is that Sylas is such an ability based champion. Like he's not really like a one rotation like in and out kind of champion. Like you want to stay in the fight, but you don't want to stay in the fight and just use one set of abilities and like that's it. You want to stay alive, get one W off, like keep fighting for a bit, auto attacking, get another W off. Like every time you use W in a fight, you're essentially like resetting the fight. Like you're getting like a mini reset every time you press W, because every time you heal, you're buying more time that you can spend fighting, which allows your cooldowns to come back up again. So that's why CDR is such an OP stat on Sylas. And CDR boots a good early game, and they also scale the best on him. Late game, having like those really short W's with like a lot of AP is very lethal, which leads into your 3 core. The mythic is non-negotiable. Everfrost is Sylas's best mythic. The reason for that is because once again we're playing off cheap item spikes. Everfrost is the most gold efficient, and it also is just the cheapest. Full stop. The other AP mythics are 3.2k gold, and they just aren't better than Everfrost. And the reason for that is because the active Glaciate, even if you don't land the root, if you slow someone, you're pretty much guaranteeing an E2 on them. But if you do land the root, you have access to the deadliest combo on Sylas, which is Everfrost into Q into E. So when you land the root on them, you chuck the Q down on top of them. You're guaranteed to get the detonate damage from your Q2, which by the way does a lot of damage. The AP ratio and the flat damage on it is insane. The detonation, and it allows you to guarantee hitting E2, which is your chain, your little pool chain. So getting this item unlocks your full damage combo, which otherwise you pretty much would never be able to hit it. Your next item after Everfrost is Zhonya's. This is kind of self-explanatory, but I'll just go into it. The reason why you go Zhonya's is that Sylas is a melee champion. He's kind of an assassin, kind of a fighter, but he's an AP melee champ that is building like AP items, right? So you're quite squishy. You don't really have any real defenses outside of your W healing you. So getting Zhonya's, which gives you AP and Stasis, is the best defensive item you can get on Sylas. So Stasis is so OP on Sylas. It allows you to do so many things. You can tower dive. You can go face first into a team fight. You can dive their carries. You can, you can like fight someone in a 1v1. And if you're losing, like you press W, you press Zhonya's, and then your W is back up again, and you win the fight. So this item is extremely strong on Sylas, followed by Death Cap. So most of the time, you'll be going Death Cap after your Zhonya's, and the reason for that is because Sylas has insane AP ratios on his abilities, his Q, his E. They have insane AP ratios. Then he has AP ratio on his W, his passive, his ults. If you pick up AP ults, even if you pick up 80 ults, it converts the AD ratio into an AP ratio. So AP is a very good stat on Sylas. And I think a big thing is that not only do you just like do more damage, but something that's like really rare is that your utility in your kit is buffed by AP as well. And what I mean by that is that the heal in Sylas's kit, his W heal is like a utility part of his kit, right? And it scales with AP. So there's not many utility abilities that like scale with the offensive stat that you're building. So like imagine you're playing like an AD champ, and then you build lethality, and then your lethality allows like your utility skills to be more useful. Like imagine if Ashe, like her hawkshot became faster with lethality or something like that. Like it's kind of like that, you know what I mean? But yeah. These are situational items. If they build a lot of magic resist, void stuff is very good. If they don't have magic resist, I like going for cosmic drive. If they have a lot of magic damage / they don't have champions that can break your spell shield, Banshee's Veil is also quite good, but I don't really build this item that often because there are a lot of champions in the game that can pop your Banshee's Veil, and the stats on it are kind of mid. Magi is a very good item when you have 10 stacks. Movement speed on melee champs, very good. You can stack it up pretty easily when you're fed, so Magi is quite a good item. But for the most part, most games end by the time you get Death Gap, because if you are not behind the clock and you're like even with the clock, like you have decent CS and you have decent amount of kills and you've like accelerated and grown well, you're usually ending the game on this item. And this is the most consistent setup you can go. Sometimes, and I must stress this, sometimes you have to go void third items. So if for some awful, terrible reason your team is completely stacking AP and enemy team is building a lot of magic resist, then you kind of need to buy void stuff to do anything. But for the most part, boots into Everfrost, into Zhonya, into Deathcap is the most consistent build. So when picking Sylas, I actually recommend not blind picking him, to be honest. He actually has quite a lot of hard matchups, but he is still a really solid champion. So even if you do have a rough early game, I guess you can still do pretty well mid to late, but that's like under one condition. So the biggest condition for picking Sylas is even if you have a rough matchup, you can play it, right? But you need good ults on the enemy team if you have a bad matchup. If you have a bad matchup and there are no good ults on the enemy team, then you're just not gonna have fun. So generally, like if you're 1P or 2P, I steer away from it because it's just too risky of a pick. That said, Sylas is like an amazing counter pick. He is an absolutely amazing counter pick. So let's say enemy locks in like Alistar or something. Alistar, one of the best ults for Sylas. Amumu, Malphite, like all these champions that have like AoE, huge burst damage ults, like they're extremely strong. Like Blitzcrank ult is really good. Diana ult is really good. Most of the time you'll be seeing, like if you're blind picking, right, you'll probably be seeing like other roles. So like what I like to look out for is supports. So a lot of supports get picked early, and a lot of them actually have quite good ults. So Blitzcrank ult is a very powerful ult. Nautilus ult is very good too. Leona has a good ult. Like as long as you can get a good ult, and the main things that like you should look for from a good ult are AoE, CC, good burst damage. These are the big things for picking Sylas blind. But otherwise, there are some good matchups that you just pick Sylas into. Like I like picking him into Aryan, Akali, and these sorts of things. But I'll go through a complete matchup list or tier list later at the end of the video. So I'll just quickly go over the skill build that I run on Sylas pretty much every game. So level 1, it depends on your matchup. Some matchups you'll want to start E. Most of the time, E start is if you're versing a melee champ. What you want to do is E the melees as they die and E the enemy melee mid laner at the same time. I'll show you an example of that later when we go into gameplay clips. But E start if you're versing melee, Q start if you're versing range. Pretty simple. So when you're level 2, most of the time you have these two abilities. Sometimes you'll have EW if you're kind of winning your lane. But level 3 you'll have all 3 abilities, and then here is where you kind of need to pay attention. I always go 2 points in Q early, and the reason for this is that having 1 point in Q early like doesn't really give you enough wave control or enough ability to clear waves and roam and stuff. So just like getting an extra point here allows you to do more early game in regards to your waves, because if you like go pure W max, I don't know if you've ever experienced this if you guys are Sylas players, but when you go pure W max, it is extremely hard to farm waves and like CS. You have to use Q, like auto, E, auto, and then use your one huge damaging ability, which is your W, on one minion. So like your two other abilities do like no damage, and then your W like nukes one minion, and the whole wave is still like half HP. So I like putting an extra point into Q early, and then from there I like to max W, and then depending on the game, if I'm like extremely far ahead, I like to max E because the cooldown gets reduced and you get to make more plays and dash more. It's more fun, but Q is very consistent. So going into Sylas combos, it's not really too hard. Most of the time it's like kind of self-explanatory, slash if you like gather experience you'll be able to know what to do in certain scenarios. But the most common trade is to like E auto W auto then E. That like doesn't incorporate your Q. So if I'm playing like a lane and I'm like HP advantage and I want to like dash forward a lot, and they're playing within my range, I'll do this, and then I'll like throw the Q as they start running away. That's what I like to do. If they're like playing really far away and they're a range champ, they're kind of spacing you. Sometimes you have to like E and then hope you land the next E and then W and then do the same thing with Q. Depending on like if the enemy has boots as well. So something you can do is you can throw your Q early. So let's say like you E and then you land E2, you can throw Q in front of them and then start autoing them and then use your W late, because like if they run forward in a straight line away from you, they will get hit by the detonation, which if you have 2 points early will do a lot of damage. Or they have to run sideways and then they have to take like extra damage from you. Another combo you can do versus range champs is you don't have to start with EE like this. You don't have to do that. Something you can do is you can E and then Q and then E again. So what that does is like that slows the enemy laner so that it can allow you to hit your E easier. But the risk of it is that a lot of times they'll be dodging already, so like you might not even land the Q slow. But that is a good combo as well, like Q and then E, and then go in with your autos and W.
Tried to test me once.
But the combo I was talking about earlier, which involves Everfrost, is this is the max damage combo you can do on Sylas. So you E forward, you land the root, and then you press Q, you E, and you auto W, auto. So that is the max damage combo. You gotta root them, then you press Q, and then you hit them with the E2. So Sylas combos, it's kind of on the fly. Every situation is kind of different. For the most part, if they're within your dash range, you want to do this, which is pretty simple. It's just E, auto, W, auto, E, auto. But if they're kind of playing far away, sometimes you have to just YOLO and try and hope the E hits. If you have Everfrost, that's when it becomes way easier. You don't really need to YOLO anymore. You can just dash and then chuck out the Everfrost. If they get rooted, it's a guaranteed hit. You want to Q press, of course. If they don't get rooted, then they're slowed, and it's still pretty easy to land E. So those are the main combos on Sylas. Something you can do that's also pretty big is, I can't really show it in practice tool, but you can actually press R during your E2. So if enemy has like a really good ult that you want to use when you're on top of them, you press E1, and then while your chain is going out, you can press R, and it gives you their ult when you're on top of them. But it also works with once you already have the ult. So let's say I already hijacked like Nico ult or something, and I am Eing on her. So I pressed R on her already. I guess I'll show you what I would do. So Nico was standing here. I would press R on her, so I would have Nico ult, and then I would like Everfrost, and then press E, and then I would be ulting right there. You can actually press R during your E2 if you're stealing the ult, or if you already have the ult. You can cast any ult. You can cast Ezreal ult during your E. You can cast a Mumu ult during your E, you can cast anything, and it's something that you should try to utilize when you're trying to one-shot somebody.
I was illuminated, even me.
I want to stress that there's a lot of intricacies to Sylas' comboing. Every situation will be different, so it just takes practice. There's not really a way to like learn what the best combo is for every situation. You kind of just get a feel for it. That said, honestly, you can't go wrong if you just do standard combos. So like, don't try to do anything flashy. Most of the time, just dashing, Everfrosting, landing QE is like the best way to fight in pretty much any scenario. So like, you can just like run around the map. Like when you're skirmishing, use your E over a wall, do that. It's pretty much the same combo everywhere you go. Like that's the best way, I guess, to make it consistent if you're a new player. Don't get too caught up in the combos. They're really simple. You just gotta get a feel for how the abilities work. You gotta weave auto attacks between your abilities. That's like the main thing. If you can weave auto attacks between your abilities, then knowing which combo to do in which situation like really becomes not that important, because you will eventually learn what the best way to do it is. Even if you don't do it optimally, using your abilities in any order, as long as they all land, is doing a lot of damage and being very impactful. So the first laning example I'll give you here is just like a textbook lane phase. This is kind of like the ideal scenario that you want on Sylas every game in a ranged matchup. This is just a random solo queue game from the other day. I was versing a Veigar, which is kind of a meta pick at the moment, so what you want to do on first wave is you kind of want to play extremely passive. So I will say in this matchup, Veigar is not really threatening, so there's like a lot of things I can do. I don't really have to start Q and CS like this, but I opt to do it anyway because it is the most consistent and safest start. So you want to Q the three melees that die first.
I'll match it.
And then after that, you kind of want to chill, wait for your moment. You can go in for ranged minions. If this was like a more threatening champion, I would 100% be down to give up some melees here. But I mean some ranged creeps. But since it's a Veigar and he's not very threatening, I'm walking into the wave and I'm setting up autos in the second wave. So my goal here is to get an early reset and get a nice item base and just come back to lane and start putting pressure on. So as long as I'm playing the lane with a minion advantage, I'm like in a really happy spot here. So I already know from how Veigar's playing, from how I've played the early lane, that I'm going to get a good base off, or I'm going to get a good window to roam. In this game, I ended up going for a potential roam and not basing, but In a lot of other games, it would have been a really consistent play to just recall and buy some items while the enemy mid laner is still stuck in lane. So unfortunately, I gave you guys kind of a troll replay, and I actually missed 4 CS already, but oh, 5 now, but it's alright, it happens, we're all human. It's okay to miss CS. So this is wave 4. Wave 4 crash is probably the most consistent wave to crash on. I think wave 3 is a decent wave to crash on as well, but I find that it usually feels harder to get a wave 3 crash in mid lane, so I like going for the wave 4 a lot of the time. Here, since I've got my wave set up to crash, I'm just like using abilities in the wave. I think something to note here is that I actually opted into 2 points Q before putting any points in the W here, because I knew that I just wasn't going to trade with this guy at all and I was looking for a wave crash. So I went for the Q, point in Q to get more damage in the wave. So here, I would have based here in most games, but because something happened top, I panned my camera up and I thought maybe there's a chance I go up and get a kill. I didn't end up getting a kill, but that's kind of just a textbook lane phase. If you're versing a champ that isn't threatening you at all, that is like the ideal scenario. So what you want to do now is you want to recall, you want to buy a Dark Seal, and you want to come back to lane with Dark Seal and Control Ward. You don't have to use TP here because you crashed a decent wave into his turret and it'll take him a long time to push back. So what ends up happening is Veigar is stuck trying to crash a wave into your turret and you're back in lane with an item advantage. And what this is called is a cheetah recall. You might have heard this from other coaches or high level players, but getting a cheetah recall on Sylas is the dream scenario. So that is just a quick example of what a dream scenario on Sylas is. The second example here is an example of when the enemy mid laner is putting pressure on you and they actually get the push into your turret, and this is a set play that you can do in a lot of scenarios actually if you play well. So this is a bounce crash. So this is when he pushes into your turret, and what happens in League is like when a wave crashes into a turret, what'll happen is that the wave will bounce. So if he's pushing into your turret and it crashes into your turret and he starts hitting your turret and getting plates or whatever, eventually your wave will do the same thing that he just did to you. So your wave will crash back into him unless he's just hard pushing. But we'll just watch the example now. So level 1, I'm sitting back. I know I get poked by this guy. He'll just laser me like whenever he wants, to be honest here. Maybe he started Q, I don't remember. But I'm just waiting for the melees to get low and then I go in for the CS. So when you're going for the CS, you're trying to hit the enemy champion as well as the melees, if possible, because every bit of damage you get on them is like, you're never gonna deal enough damage to lethal someone in hard matchups, but every time you get chunk damage on him, it makes him scared to play aggressive on you, right? So imagine the pressure that Victor feels if he has no more potions left when he's harassing you, versus if he's just chilling, sitting on 2 potions. So every time you take damage, try and give damage back, even if you know that there's like no opportunity for you to kill them in the lane. So what happens is like he's been autoing the wave the whole time, he's been hard pushing, he crashes 2 waves here. If they 2-wave crash into you, it is kind of a mistake, to be honest. It is kind of a bad play from him, but you just got to capitalize on these kind of mistakes in solo queue. So he did a 2-wave crash instead of a 3-wave or a 4-wave. And what this allows me to do is I actually hit level 3 first here and get priority on the wave. Because of how it was positioned, I hit 3 first, and now he's scared to walk up on me. Because if he walks up too close, I get a big trade on him with all my abilities. Now, this is the bounce coming into effect. I already know here that my goal is to reset as soon as my wave hits his turret. Like, I don't want to stay in this lane any longer because I know for sure he wins before first base. He wins while I'm just sitting on a corrupting potion, like just poking me with his laser over and over. So as soon as I saw the opportunity to get the 4th wave, this is a 4-wave crash from me. As soon as I saw the opportunity to get it into him when he screwed up, I took it. Crashed the wave, he's trying to hold it, but realistically he can't. He stepped up a bit. I missed my detonation on Q, which is a bit sad. So I went for a solo kill, but he gets to live. And I do a quick tab check here, and this is like perfect scenario once again. So there were no kills happening. Like I didn't trade like crazy or anything. Like I don't know if you pay attention, like both this game and last game, I don't really focus on trading before first base. And I'm sitting with a comfy CS lead while he was spending the whole time harassing me. and I'm going to come back to lane with boots and a dark seal, and that's when I'm going to take over the game. So this is an example of losing the push, getting pushed in, the wave bouncing, and you just completely focusing on the wave, ignoring the enemy Victor. I didn't trade with him at all. I tried to Q him when I could, and now I'm going to get a good reset on him. This third example is an example of a melee matchup. This is against a Kayle, which is like on the easier side of the matchups. So, I would say like most of your melee matchups aren't gonna go like this. Like if you're versing a Yasuo or something, it's gonna be hard. But I could for sure see like an Akali matchup kind of going like this, right? So, big thing here is that at level 1, I'm doing the same thing as versus range. I'm not touching any creeps. However, I have skilled E because I know what I'm gonna do here. So I'm not touching any creeps. I'm waiting for the 3 melees to get low, and as soon as they get low, I know that Kayle is going to do the same thing as me because she hasn't touched the wave at all. I know what she's going to do, and a lot of melee mid laners are going to do the same thing. Like Akali kind of does the same thing too. She will wait until all 3 melees are low, and then she'll go in. So what happens here is that when he walks up for a CS, I walk up, I press E, I auto the minions so that I get all 3 melees, and then I hit him with the E2 and auto and exit the trade. So that is like a pretty set play that will happen like almost every time. If you're in like not challenger elos, then there's probably a high chance that the enemy mid laner is just going to randomly start autoing the minions. If that's the case, you can still apply the same concept, right? When their minions get low, you go in for the E and then you auto them as well, and then you exit the trade ASAP because you do not want to be in an extended trade.
Time to crack the upper crust.
Basically, I do that, and then she concedes pressure after I get a good trade on her. She allows me to auto the creeps, and so what I want to do here is I want to start last hitting on wave 2, just going for last hits, looking to build a 3rd wave or 4th wave crash. Here I go for an E4 just to get a bit of extra damage on her, scare her off the wave a bit more. Unfortunately, I missed, so she doesn't lose as much HP as she should have. But we're just chilling, we're just last hitting. Eventually, the 3rd wave will come, and this is when you want to look to start spamming abilities on the wave. So I've skilled Q here. I make sure to go ward because this is a window for junglers to gank you. 230, they can gank you. So here, I just want to crash this 3rd wave. Unfortunately, I do make a mistake here, and it ends up costing me, but as you guys can see, I E'd forward on Kayle there, so I went for an E on this guy to auto attack him to try and trade when it was completely unnecessary, and what ends up happening is I didn't use E on the wave and I didn't get the damage on the wave, and now my wave is frozen like outside his turret, sort of. So it's not frozen because I know I can still get this crash, but ideally I would have liked for this wave to crash and then I'd be recalling. But 4-wave crash is still fine as well. It just comes to bite me in the ass a bit because, well, I guess I'll spoil it for you guys. I get ganked here in quite a bad wave position. So because I didn't crash the 3rd wave fast enough, I'm stuck here trying to deal with this 4th wave. I've almost got it in, and jungler appears. And here, luckily because it's a Kayle, I get away with it. But for the most part, usually this is just a flash blown. Because the enemy mid laner doesn't really want to like chase you forever when you're crashing such a big wave into the turret. But yeah, this is kind of just like, I kind of just want to show you guys the main concept of pre-first base on Sylas. Like, as you can see, it's like a constant trend of me not really opting into trades. If I get a window to like CS and hit the enemy mid laner, then I'll go for it. Like, I like to Q minions and enemy champions, and I like to E minions and enemy champions when they're melee. So that's what I like to do. As soon as I base for Dark Seal and get some more stats and levels and points in my W, that's when I like to start trading, and I'll give you guys examples of like post first base trades and how you should be playing lane after. But I hope you guys can see the trend of what I'm doing in my first few levels. So this is from the same game before when I was versing the Vega that didn't do anything. So essentially what happened is when I didn't recall and I went top, I lost my window to get a recall off, so I ended up going back mid and we ended up 2v2ing and I died. But I got to TP back to lane and come back to this scenario. So essentially this is like, if nothing had happened and I was just 0-0-0 and Vega was 0-0-0, the lane kind of plays out the same way anyway. So I just collect this wave on the turret, we're just chilling. And here I am a level up on him. So this probably would have happened naturally. Like at some point I would have been a level up on him naturally, but he gets the same level as me instantly anyway. And as you can see here, like I'm just trading on him now. After playing passive for the first 4 levels, as soon as I'm in this situation in lane where it's just a neutral wave state, I'm looking for E's forward, I'm looking for W's, I'm looking to land E's and Q's. Like I want to put pressure and I want to look to like get a kill on him now. A lot of times it won't really amount to anything. So if these trades don't amount to anything, your play is to just push the wave and look for roams. But it's always worth a try to see how much damage you can get and how like if you can lethal them. So I keep trying here and eventually he is really low. And I know that like if I land one of these E's, he's going to die. So I did trade flashes with him earlier in the 2v2. So I know here if the E lands, he's just dead. So this is how a lot of my Sylas games play out. The first base, I'm always chilling, and then as soon as I come back to lane, like me and Vega, we both TP'd back to lane after the 2v2, and we're both like the same EXP, the same CS, but because I have points in my W now, like I'm just so much stronger in these trades, and I come back to lane and I just start putting the pressure on and looking for solid kills. I rush boots here, and the rest of this game, honestly, is just me pushing my mid waves. I stopped fighting Vega as much and I just start roaming around the map and taking over the game. Like here with my CDR boots, I look to slow push this wave. I crash this next wave. As soon as I crash the wave, I start running bot, and lo and behold, we get killed bot. We get fed, and that's just it. That's like really textbook Sylas gameplay in the early game. So this is from the Kale game I showed you guys earlier. Essentially, this is like post reset. We're back in lane. We're ready to put pressure on, but I think this is a good talking point as well. League of Legends is a team-based game. We all know that, right? And sometimes you can't get a lead on your own. And I feel like for a lot of you guys, you will be in situations where it's hard to do things on your own. But if you follow these laning instructions that I've given you, or like follow the same concepts, you don't necessarily have to play lane exactly like I did, but you have to like use your critical thinking and like put together some sort of plan to impact the game and win your matchup, right? So if you just like work on getting good resets and good timings and base at good windows with good wave states, you can find yourself in a lot of situations like this. So here I am, like I come out of base, the wave's pushing into me. What do I choose to do with this wave? I'm just thinning it out. Like I have a choice here. Because I got a good reset off on this guy, I have good items, I have a good wave state, and I have the option to just freeze this. And you will find yourself in this situation many, many times. What do I choose to do here? Am I running past the wave to go trade with him? No. I'm just forcing him to not be able to eat any CS. And I'm creating an opportunity for my jungler. Even if my jungler wasn't here, this Kale is still going to get zoned. I can still trade with this guy if he tries to CS. Like I can hold this freeze for a very long time because I'm using the strength of my champion post first base.
Prison can hold me.
But what happens? My jungler ends up coming anyway and the guy's just dead. Now, if we actually think about it, what did Kale actually do wrong there? Like, there's not really much he could have done, right? We played the wave state well. We used the strength of our champion well, and maybe it was just a champion gap, but I can guarantee you, like, a lot of you guys out there, you're not going to be punishing these certain matchups, like, the right way. Like, you're not going to be able to get into these situations if you don't play your waves properly. So that's, like, the emphasis I want to put on this. It's not all about getting the good first base, into good items, into, like, trading like a maniac and winning lane 1v1. Like, setting up your teammates for success is such a huge part of the game, and you're going to find yourself in so many of these situations if you, like, follow the advice I've been giving you. Before I show you guys, like, skirmishing and team fighting and stuff, I just want to recap on the whole laning phase thing. League of Legends is a hard game, right? You're not going to win lane every game. It's not solitaire. And you're playing Sylas. So Sylas, honestly, is kind of a weaker champion in lane, to be honest. So I guess my biggest advice is don't get too caught up in having a rough lane phase. Like, just try and minimize your losses. Like, go for the CS that you can. Don't be afraid to use your TP to recover yourself. Like, if your TP is getting you, like, a couple minions, like, just go for it in the early game. Like, honestly, that is what TP is used for. So try and minimize the losses. Like don't start int trading. I know a lot of people, like when they start getting behind, they just like to like bash their head against the enemy mid laner and try and get a lead out of that. That's probably the worst thing you can do. Just focus on getting the farm that you can get. Like every little CS matters so that you can get your next item. Like try and play for your first item spike. Like maybe the enemy mid lane is a bit ahead of you, right? But as long as you hit your Everfrost spike, like you're always going to be relevant. Like if you're picking him in the scenarios where he's good, like we talked about earlier, and I will elaborate more on good matchups at the end of the video, but if you pick him in good spots, um your ult is going to pop off. Like you can carry a lot of games just by being relevant, just by not being like literally 0-10. If you're sitting with a couple of deaths but you have good farm, like that is probably honestly the best way to climb, and I think a lot of people seem to miss that mark. So playing Sylas in team fights and skirmishes is kind of interesting. It's kind of a dynamic experience. And what I mean by that is that your role constantly changes in team fights, and it's dependent entirely on the ults in the game. So you should always take the best ult that you can in a game, and then you should team fight around how that best ult should be used. And I guess like something I should bring up is that there's a concept that I guess I'll just call it base Sylas. Base Sylas is essentially Sylas with no R. So imagine you're always on cooldown or you can't take any of their ults. Base Sylas wants to play team fights isolated. So Sylas wants to find 1v1s in a team fight and just like start 1v1ing some guy. Like just start using your cooldowns on a guy, spam W on him, and like usually you'll beat a lot of champions in the isolated 1v1. Whether that's like a solo laner that's caught off on the side, whether that's like an ADC that's alone in the backline that you can get on. Like that's how base Sylas wants to play, right? But if you're picking Sylas in the right spot, a lot of the times you'll have ults that will allow you to team fight easier and like not have to look for these isolated 1v1s, and you can kind of just like run into the team fight, which I will give examples of later. But here, like these guys are all kind of split, so this is like ideal scenario for base Sylas. And that said, I have a really good ult for base Sylas as well. So Nautilus ult kind of like amplifies like that idea of like going for isolated 1v1s on people. So I mean, we'll just play the clip. Here I am, like press R on LeBlanc instantly. So point and click CC is the counter to LeBlanc. She can't distort around, she can't like dodge anything. So I just press on her instantly because I know that I can follow up with the Everfrost into Q into EE. So she just dies instantly off the Nautilus ult. That is a combo that you can actually do on a lot of champions when you have Nautilus ult. You can very easily press R on someone, follow up with the Everfrost, follow up with the Q2 detonation, big damage into the E, guaranteed damage, and you will be able to one-shot a lot of champs in a game. And after that, it's kind of just like cleaning up one by one, like focusing one person at a time. Unfortunately, the replay stopped there. But yeah, just constantly looking for 1v1s and getting as many W's off as you can. But yeah, that is an example of a kind of like isolated dream scenario for Sylas. So in this example, this is kind of a textbook way to play Sylas. I'll show you guys. Like I'm quite ahead in this game to be honest, but this is probably the best way to play it. So here in this scenario, my team took a 4v3 really early. My Rengar ended up dying and my Renata is about to die too. So what I do here is like I do a couple abilities. I make sure all my abilities go on cooldown, and then I step back. I make sure not to overstep here and just chill, because I know that like if I go forward, I'm just gonna die here. I'm gonna inst. Like it looks like it's winnable, but honestly, like you should always be playing around your cooldown. So I just take a step back and I reassess. As soon as Nautilus Q's in, I know he's a free real estate for another W. So I just press W on him, and once again I go back to chilling. You know, like I don't want to step forward without my W. It's all about rotating these Ws. Like the more W's you get off in a fight, the higher the chance of you winning is. So I just wait, I kite back. Wukong walks up, I get another W. And now I know like they're all such low HP, like now is my window to go in. This is how you should be playing skirmishes. You play slow, play slow, play slow, get W's off, and then when they've used all their cooldowns and they have nothing left, you just go forward, you flash in. And here, like, this is just an easy kill as well. Because LB got so low from earlier, like I can just kill her like that. And that's kind of like how you want to play Sylas in these like crazy fights. You want to rotate your cooldowns as much as possible. You don't want to go all in on the first combo, you know? So here's an example of where I'm running into a fight and I already know what my goal is before like the fight started. I know exactly which ult I want to take and exactly how I want to play it. And this is something that you guys need to do when you're running to a fight as Sylas. Like you need to know like which ult you're taking and what you're gonna do with it. So here, the concept of base Sylas is completely out the window because I already know Blitzcrank ult here is the absolute most value ult. And what is the best way to use Blitzcrank ult? Standing in the middle of their entire team and pressing R. So here, the most important thing is not being selfish, being absolutely selfless and playing for the team because we are extremely behind in this game. So I'm kind of thinking like, I'm willing to sacrifice myself here as long as I do maximum damage in this team fight. So we'll play it out. We're chasing. We're kind of desperate. I know instantly which ult I want to take. I grab it. I get hooked and I press R. So that's it. That's all I did. I pressed R. I did about like 400 damage to all of their champions. I tried to get some cooldowns off. I pressed Zonya. I'm standing on the Jinx trap. I get Vega E'd and I'm just dead. But I already did my job and we actually end up winning this team fight. And honestly, like my teammates played well, but if I hadn't gone in and sacrificed myself and like bought space and did so much damage with the Blitzcrank ult, we probably wouldn't have won this fight. So that's like something you have to keep in mind. Like it's not always about being the carry or like playing base Sylas and getting these isolated fights. So coming into this fight, it's the same game. It's still Blitzcrank ult, and I still know exactly how I want to play fights. So my goal of this game doesn't change. Like this guy's isolated. I'm kind of looking at him, but I don't really care about chasing this Graves. Like he's isolated. I could for sure flash on that Graves and kill him, but I absolutely do not care about this guy. Right now, I am so absolutely tunnel visioned on this Blitzcrank and taking his ults that like I make sure to put my mouse on him perfectly so that I don't misclick. I grab his ult and I instantly flash into their team and press it. So like that's how you should be thinking about Sylas in team fights. Like obviously every fight is going to be different and I can't tell you like the perfect way to play every team fight because it's so dynamic. Like every team fight's different. Your goal is different every team fight. You just have to like think critically before the fight starts. You have to think, what is my job? Like, and how do I accomplish it? And I think the best way for that is to think about the ults in the game. Like, obviously, like you're not gonna get it right every time, but a good place to start is to just look at the ults, look what the best one is to take, grab it, and think, what is the best way I can use this ult? Who's the threats on the enemy team? Like threat assessment. This is like all stuff that applies to all champions, not necessarily Sylas. So I guess like the most important thing for Sylas is knowing which ult to take and how to use it. And here, I knew I grabbed Blitzcrank ult, I flashed into their team. They're all gonna die. This is the last clip I want to show you guys, and I think this is like kind of an important one because you're gonna be in these situations so often. This is like a textbook play with Zonyas. This is like playing your absolute limits and knowing how to use Zonyas. Like if you don't go for these kind of plays and you don't utilize your Zonyas to the maximum that it can be utilized, then you're kind of not making the most out of the champion. Because I honestly feel like Sylas, Everfrost, and Sylas Zonyas, like they're just a part of his kit at this point. Like you should be playing around them like they're a part of your kit. So basically, like this skirmish starts off with it's just an isolated 1v1. Like I said, this is just base Sylas doing what base Sylas does best. Getting on one person and just rotating cooldowns on them without taking too much damage. Like as long as it's a 1v1, you're free to take like deal damage to them and just trade HP with them, right? Like I'm really happy to just start stacking my Conqueror, getting damage on him, and in fact like I'm pretty much killing him. But what I do here instead is once I've taken the Sejuani ult, my goal in this fight has changed. I want to use the Sejuani ult on a carry. I don't want to use it on this Sejuani. So I actually had vision on the center from earlier. I think at some point I'll go back. But I actually have vision of Senna running down. So when I take this Sejuani ult, I do damage to him and I realize like I don't actually want to use Sej ult here. I want to throw it at the carry. And if I throw it at the carry, will I be able to live? Yes, because I have Zonyas. So I throw it at the carry, I completely ignore the Sejuani. And I flash onto the person that I Sej ulted, kill him, I press Q, and then I press Zonyas. So I've like completely dived, I've created so much space and so much chaos in this fight. I've one-shot their carry, and I left the Sejuani on 10 HP for someone else to kill. And then I press Zonyas, and that's just what you should be doing in so many fights as Sylas. If you can get the isolated scenario, you go for it. As soon as you get an ult that changes how you play the fight, you got to think about what your next move is. So I took Sejuani ult here, and I thought, if I throw it at a carry, I can one-shot him in the stun. I can flash E him, I can W him, and then I can Zhonya's, and then I can W again after my Zhonya's. And all of that is like part of how to team fight and how to skirmish with Sylas. Like using all this knowledge. Like it's like step one, what ult do I want to take? Step two, like how do I want to play the fight? And then step three, like how do I want to use Zhonya's? I think how do I want to use Zhonya's is honestly like an underrated thing to think about. And I think it's something that as soon as you start thinking about how to use it, you'll notice that a lot of your skirmishes will become a lot better. Like they'll go your way more often. So this is just a quick little tier list I put together in like 5 minutes. For the most part, if you follow this, you can't really go wrong. It was kind of quick, to be honest. I didn't put like too much thought into each matchup because, to be honest with you, like I haven't played like all these matchups like multiple times. I've played all of them at least like a handful of times, but I think something to note is that in the skill column, these matchups can go either way. So these can be really volatile and hard matchups depending on how you play. So just keep that in mind. To be honest, like I feel like the skill column is more like it's more weighed towards the harder side even. But if you see like some of these easy champs in your games, I'm sure you can have a good game on Sylas. But at the end of the day, all of these champs are playable into, except these two probably. But yeah, just the biggest thing is being able to pick Sylas in a situation where they have good ults. So just always keep that in mind.